So, buying a home has definitely changed a lot in this past year. And even though it was about 10 or 11 months ago, some of you guys may have seen the lawsuit where the National Association of Realtors, which I am a part of, was sued due to the fact that they mentioned that, oh, there was a tying practice where they were forcing sellers to pay inflated commissions to buyer's agents. For those of you who are unfamiliar, anytime you go to buy a house, at least in pretty recent times, the last couple of decades, for the most part, all of the costs associated are all mostly on the seller side, right? They're paying the on average 3% commission to the buyer agent, so the guy helping someone buy your house, and then 3% on the selling side for the agent helping you sell your house, right? And that's just kind of what's been normal. That's just been what a lot of people have gotten accustomed to over the last few years. And so one thing that was found over time is, well, a lot of these people, I guess, on the other side, some of these, lawmakers, what have you, with this lawsuit, they found that this was an unjust practice, and that even though we're accustomed to it, sellers should not be, in fact, paying these high of prices to sell their home. And they have actually noted that due to this, they actually believe that there's reduced competition and creates an unfair cost for home sellers. Now, I'm not really necessarily concerned on the ethical side of it, all these different things. The main thing I'm concerned with is every single day, I maybe not every single day, but fairly often, I have friends, I have family, I have people, even in this live chat, who have still not really seen the problems with this. They haven't seen necessarily the things that have come from this lawsuit and basically the massive changes that have hit real estate. And since I keep hearing it, I just want to keep talking about it to let people know, so this way they don't get a bad real estate agent and then you could actually foot the bill of thousands and thousands of dollars more than you should have, if you knew what this rule was. So I just wanted to go through real quick. I wanted to showcase an example of a document here, and then we'll go through some Q&A, whatever you guys want to talk about. So the first thing is this right here. This is a document that I have written up a million times for clients, but it has changed in the last year. That's still, like I said, a lot of people aren't familiar with. So it's called the exclusive right to buy buyer's agency contract, essentially binding me as a real estate agent to you to help you buy a home for a certain period of time. You can see a little bit lower. What's this period of time? It could be a year, it could be 3 months, 6 months, and we can go through it one by one if we need to. But one thing I wanted to mention here is, yeah, it's a pretty general contract. When you read through it, it's not really saying much other than, again, the binding between you and me or whoever your agent is. But what I really like to point people to, my clients specifically, and everybody who's watching this live or the VOD, is this is where you can lose a lot of money if you're not familiar and your agent's scummy. Sorry to say it for all the agents that are watching. One thing is this brokerage fee. So basically, anytime that an agent is paid, technically the broker is paid, and then the broker pays you. The broker is the owner of the brokerage that you're at. So if you're like a Keller Williams, you'll have someone above you. If you're just a real estate agent, they'll pay the person at Keller Williams, and then they pay you as the agent. That's just kind of how it works. That's why they call it a brokerage fee. Now, there's a few different options here, and this is the biggest change. This is the thing that has absolutely changed real estate, immensely recently, and it's got everybody still up in arms. I see a lot of comment sections on Instagram and all these different things, and a lot of people are just like they're just not getting it right. So here it is. So basically, it's essentially stating the commission on how it's going to be paid. So, like we said in the lawsuit, now it's no longer incumbent on the seller to pay the 3% for the seller's agent and 3% for the buyer's agent. Now it's just going to be okay. Whatever the selling agent's getting is what they're getting, 3%, 2.5%, whatever it is. And now the buyer's agent is basically SOL, S out of luck, unless they put this thing in play here, that would basically guarantee that they would get some sort of a commission for helping you buy a house. And so basically what this is stating is, well, most of the time you'll see this option here, number B, or option B, a brokerage fee of a particular percentage of the purchase price of the home. That's like the most standard. That's what we've always kind of done as realtors over the years. So let's just say we put a 3 here, right? So that means 3% of the purchase price. So if you go and buy a $300,000 house, okay, me as the buyer's agent helping you buy this $300,000 house, I'm owed technically $9,000 in commission. Now, what this is stating here is that that is what my commission is. And that's what you're understanding by signing this contract with me, that by me helping you, I want 3%. That's my fee. Just like if you go to get a haircut, they say my fee is $25. Okay, by helping you buy this house, my fee is 3%. But a little bit lower is where it gets a little dicey. This is where people get a little bit unsure, and if it's not explained, it just doesn't make sense. So there's a few options. So the first one, the brokerage fee will come solely from the buyer. Now that's okay. If you see that checked off, you're gonna have to have a conversation with the agent. All right, that's the first. That's the first conversation you must have with them, because that essentially states that not only when you go to buy this house are you going to have to put your down payment down, right? If it's an FHA loan, call it 3.5%. Conventional loan, call it 3 to 5%. So let's just say it's 5% down, like I did on my house that I just bought not too long ago, as representing myself as my own agent. I ended up putting 5% down on this house. Let's say it's a 300K house. So I paid $15,000 as a down payment to get in the door for this house. On top of that, at the closing table, when you go to get your keys and everything, you also have to pay something called closing costs. These are like lender fees, administration fees, title fee, a million different fees, the closing attorneys or whatever state you're in fees, whatever they charge for particular closing. On average, it's about 1 to 2% of the home loan, depending on your lender and all these different things. So in my case, it's around 2%. We'll say it's 2% in this case. So I'm paying 15 grand for the down payment. Now I'm paying an additional 2%, or on this 300K house, $6,000. So now I am basically taking out of my bank account $21,000 to buy this house. But if this option is checked and you have an agent that says, I want 3% and the brokerage fee is coming solely from the buyer, now you also owe your agent 3%. And remember, it's on the purchase price of the house. So if it's a 300K house, guess who has to pay another $9,000 up to its, now you're at a total of $30,000 out of pocket for this entire transaction. And essentially, yeah, you're paying your agent directly 3%, whereas prior to 10, 11 months ago, it was basically guaranteed to be on the seller's side. It was guaranteed to be, 3%, 9 grand. They sell the house, the proceeds go to the agent. Okay, cool. Now, again, this is not fear mongering, because I'm going to go into it a little bit more. Now, this is just one option. And this is not the standard at this moment. Will it be the standard in the future? I don't know. But this is why I'm making this video. And that's why I want you guys to know that this is a possibility. And to know this before you sign anything, because my friend almost signed it. And then I saw it and I was like, okay, let's talk about this. So now it got me fired up with these freaking agents. So now the second thing is option B. So brokerage fee will come from the buyer less the amount the broker receives from the seller or listing broker. So this is the most common one that you'll see nowadays. And also break down why the buyer agents aren't at fault either. Like basically nobody's at fault. I'll tell you why. But in this case, it means that we're going to try to get as much as possible from the seller as we can. In my case, I just literally got under contract with a client. Actually, somebody met from YouTube. So if anybody wants to move to South Carolina, let me know. I'll help you out. But we're under contract with them. And luckily, when I called up the agent to do what's called like a compensation agreement, to ask them, hey, will the seller give me, the buyer, my percentage? Maybe I want 3%, right? Luckily, they already had negotiated that seller would be paying that, because again, it's still so new that even like most sellers just still accept the fact that they're paying most of those fees. So it's not like widespread yet, I will say, but it's definitely, it's starting. It's starting to be talked about a little bit more in these little conversations in the real estate world. So if this is the case, and say my fee is 3%, and let's say the seller says, okay, Anthony, we get it, but we're only going to pay 2% as the sellers. We're going to sell our house. We'll give you 2%, which means you're in a deficit of 1%, because this contract does state that you're going to be earning 3% on this deal, right? But if they're only giving you 2%, what happens? So less the amount of the broker. So it's 2%. That means 1% will come from the buyer in this case. So in this case, a 300K house, you'll owe $3,000 to your agent in that particular case. Again, if the seller says, "Cool, we'll give you 3%," then yeah, obviously you don't owe anything as the buyer whatsoever. The main thing is just to know what's this top number, how much is their total commission, and how much are they able to get from the seller. Then the third option, which you'll see a little bit less common. You'll see it if you're like a friend of somebody or what have you. But they'll put option C, which is seller or listing broker pays the brokerage fee and buyer has no obligation to pay. So no matter what the seller gives you, whether it's 3% or 0%, they say we're not paying the buyer at all, the buyer's agent at all. The buyer will have no obligation, so you won't have to worry about this whatsoever. And so that's the biggest breakdown, and that's the one thing. Again, it seems small, but it can make the world of difference when, if you have not been briefed on this and you get to the closing table and all of a sudden you're like, okay, cool, I only have to put down 21,000 to get in this house, right? Closing costs and down payment. And then the people are talking to you like, well, wait a second, no, you owe an extra 9,000 actually, because your agent is requiring that. And you're like, wait a second, we never had a conversation about paying him. I thought he gets paid by the seller. It's all do these changes. And again, I've had people close to me who have said they've almost got, have had this happen to them. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this today, and I'll come to the comments in just a moment. Of course, if you guys have any questions whatsoever, let me know, and let's go through, because this gets me fired up. There's a little bit more things here that we can actually go into. It's not the biggest deal of thing, but essentially just know that, so before I go into it, let me I mentioned how the buyer's agent's not at fault. This is not like evil buyer's agents, right, to help you buy a house. Agents do a lot of work. A lot of people say the contrary. They'll just say like, they're just a hack. They'll just show you a house and just say, oh, it looks nice, and then they're just out for a paycheck. And maybe some are like that. I haven't necessarily fully encountered them, at least in a business setting. They're definitely out there. But I would say a lot of agents try to act in as good faith as possible. They try to get their commission because their time is worth money, showing you 20, 30 houses, taking months, at a time to show you different houses. Agents are kind of trying to be the jack of all trades without ever being an expert in any of them. Like, they're pseudo inspectors, right? Okay, these things are wrong with the house, the wall, there's cosmetic issues with the wall, or maybe we'll get up in the attic and be like, I don't know about your HVAC unit, or this is looking a little old, all these different things. You kind of get a feel as an agent just by walking through a million houses, what would be wrong. Oh, the foundation doesn't look that great, little things like that. And so I would say that that's worth a ton of money. And then even the main thing is, when you have an agent, for the most part, personally, when I do it, I like the other people. I like the clients to find the houses. They know what they're looking for. I'll send them some stuff, but if they find it, it's a lot more powerful. And then I'll save the money on the deal. And when you make money on the deal, it essentially means like, oh, I'll write a contract for you. I'll actually, I'll bring this back. On the deal, essentially like, oh, I'll write up a contract for you, right? We're gonna go buy this house. And I'll write up something like, maybe there's a couple things that need to be fixed. So I'll say, pay my, give my buyer $5,000 in what we call concessions or paid closing costs. Remember those closing costs we talked about earlier? In that example, 300K house, $6,000. We can have it and negotiate in which, like, if there's some issues with, like, I don't know, some issue with the HVAC, like in this particular house I bought, the whole central air unit was broken. So I said, listen, if you just fix that, we're good. Ended up being like a $500 fix, something like that, which ended up basically covering all of my closing costs. So there's ways to negotiate, and that's why they should be compensated, I would say, in that way, because if you have a good agent, they could save you a lot of money, like actually a lot of money. And then before we get into some of the comments, I just want to mention a couple quick things that you might be unsure of. This called the administrative fee and the retainer fee. Just a couple of things. It's like, if you're going to stay with the client for a particular time, or more specifically, this administrative fee. Typically on the back end, depending on what brokerage you're with as an agent, just so you know, on the back end, you'll owe a certain amount of money to your broker per transaction. So maybe like, just because you're under them, the broker takes a bit of a cut outside of their normal, like 20% cut. They'll take like a $200 fee to process or something like that. Most agents will actually negotiate that so that you end up paying that at the end. So the buyer will pay the $200 to negotiate that. It's not the biggest deal, but it's also just something to know. I guess the last thing is the term of agency. Just know that, and we can go through more of this contract. If you guys see anything that's interesting, we could do it or another day. But terms of agency, this is essentially just stating when your contract is going to start and end with that agent, which means, essentially, like if we say, hey, it ends next year, next February, so 2026, if for some reason at some point you guys never end this agreement, like you don't have a conversation with them and say, I'm just going to ghost them, and they find out that you got on with another agent, they bought a house, or you bought a house with them, technically, if you sign with this guy, he might be obligated to that commission back because you signed with him. So I guess the main thing is just make sure that you know are upfront. Make sure it's the right realtor. Don't just go with the first one you have. Don't go with Joe Schmo from Zillow, unless you like Joe Schmo. And just make sure you're choosing correctly, so this way you don't run into any of these issues. But I do want to get to the live chat because I think we'll have some interesting things. I will leave something on the screen here. Thought it was interesting. This little QR code. If you do scan it, goes to my website. It's essentially a Calendly to book a time with me. Should you have questions about real estate, stuff like that. If you're moving within or to South Carolina, I could help you buy a house if you like me for some reason, which I don't know why you would. Or if you live in any of the other 50 states, I can actually refer you to an agent that I choose. You know, I've been doing this for a few friends. I actually think it's probably a good service. If you somehow trust my mindset, you like these videos, I can find you an agent in your city that they do the best job possible, is not going to screw you over. So this way you have the smoothest home buying process possible. I get a commission on the back end, but there's no additional cost to you as the buyer. You just get a good seamless agent essentially. So I'll just leave that there in case you guys are interested in it, because I actually think it could be a pretty interesting thing.